And in a spirit of bipartisanship, the House just elected Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Bipartisanship? Isn't that a funny way to say Uniparty? Speaking of uniparties, James Burnham has some good insights on this in his 1941 book, The Managerial Revolution. In it, he writes, "The managers can maintain their ruling position only then through assuring for themselves control of the state, and thus indirectly of the instruments of production. But to guarantee this control of the state without dictatorship, with democracy that is, freedom for public minority political expression is not so simple." So far, the development toward managerial society has been everywhere accompanied by the tendency toward a one-party monopoly in the political arena, a tendency which has reached completion in most countries. Burnham's right. In China, for instance, the political party became the government. This was true in the Soviet Union as well. The Politburo was not the official Soviet government. It was the main political party in the country. It would be like if the US Constitution was set aside and instead of our real government running things, the Democratic Party did. This is why George Washington denounced political parties. They're not in our Constitution. We're not supposed to be running things through political parties, but little by little, they've subverted the system, like taking over the function of the Electoral College. Before 1824, if someone wanted to be president, they had to make their case before delegates at the Electoral College. Representatives of the state legislatures were the ones who voted on the candidates. Then after the ascendancy of political parties, it was party bosses and oligarchs who had the authority to choose the candidates months before the official Electoral College. These are private corporations, so they essentially took over the function of a part of our government, like the Federal Reserve would later do with the Treasury. As I said before, having private corporations take over departments is like having a Coca-Cola branch of the government, or a Microsoft branch of the government, or, in terms of the CDC, a Pfizer branch of the government. When the Federalists drafted the Constitution, they were afraid of states organizing outside the federal government. They didn't want what they called sectionalism to gain an ascendancy. That's like when the southern states created a bloc and acted collectively, which of course resulted in the Civil War. So the Federalists put a clause in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, that says, "No state shall enter into any agreement or compact with another state." Well, political parties create a mechanism for this to happen. Instead of, say, states communicating through the federal layer, representatives can bypass those channels and coordinate through a political party. The party becomes the de facto organizing principle of the federal government. Look at the checks and balances that were supposed to exist in the Constitution. We had a divided government on purpose, to make a dictatorship harder to bring about. So the House of Representatives was supposed to have an antagonistic relationship with the Senate. The Senate was supposed to have an antagonistic relationship with the president, and so forth. By introducing political parties, you have a Republican president, all cozy with Republican senators and congressmen from his own political party. The power dynamics totally change. Little by little, the political party becomes the government, like what we're watching with the FBI becoming a department of the shadow government, and in effect becoming the de facto police force of the Democratic Party. Speaking of which, some of the patriotic America First candidates lobbied to create a commission to look into the extra-constitutional state of things. Here are the concessions McCarthy had to make for speakership. After 4 grueling days and 15 votes, Representative Kevin McCarthy, Republican California, is finally Speaker of the House, but not without having made a pile of concessions to a group of hardline Republicans who think he will be too accommodating to uniparty interests. It adds, for Ogles, the basis of all the negotiations was to establish the rules of the game in Congress that has been altered over the years beyond recognition. As he pointed out, the rules of the game almost always determine the winner. He shared with me a list of some of what has been roughly negotiated to date. The devil, as always, is in the details. 1. As has been reported, it will take only a single congressman acting in what is known as a Jeffersonian motion to move to remove the speaker, if he or she goes back on their word or policy agenda. 2. A church-style committee will be convened to look into the weaponization of the FBI and other government organizations, presumably the CIA, the subject of the original church committee against the American people. 3. Term limits will be put up for a vote. 4. Bills presented to Congress will be single subject and not omnibus with all attendant earmarks, and there will be a 72-hour minimum period to read them. 5. The Texas border plan will be put before Congress. From the Hill, the 4-pronged plan aims to complete physical border infrastructure, fix enforcement policies, enforce our laws in the interior and target cartels and criminal organizations. 6. COVID mandates will be ended, as will all funding for them, including so-called emergency funding. 7. Budget bills would stop the endless increases in the debt ceiling and hold the Senate accountable for the same. Perhaps the most important bullet point was the one that said a church-style committee will be convened to look into the weaponization of the FBI and other government organizations. Because just as political parties aren't in our Constitution, neither are the CIA and FBI. These are all adjuncts of the shadow government, what Trump popularized as the deep state, or what onlookers are now referring to as the Uniparty. For Americans to save the republic, they have to dislodge the mechanisms of what is quickly becoming a one-party state, an American Soviet, complete with Soviet-style censorship, Soviet-style elections, and Soviet-style state surveillance. And we have to stop looking for salvation from political parties. The truth is, the political parties were established in the first place to subvert the Constitution and take over its function. The John Birch Society provides a national program designed to counter the big government agenda and to restore our rights. Standing for constitutional freedoms for more than 60 years, the John Birch Society has been the force that protects and restores American liberty and independence. Check them out at jbs.org.